I hadn't been home in 3 months, maybe 4. And the only reason I even came back was because my mom texted that, "We miss you, and Dad's been asking about you," which sounded fake in the way greeting cards sound fake. But I guess I needed a break from my apartment and its broken radiator. So I drove back to Fort Collins, thinking I'd stay a night or two, eat some decent food, maybe grab my old hoodie from the hall closet. I didn't expect it to hit me the second I stepped into the living room. There, in the far left corner where my childhood piano used to live, was a new IKEA rug, a potted fiddle leaf fig, and a vanilla-scented candle sitting on a chunky wood stand that didn't match anything else. But even with all the props, you could still see the absence. Like how you can tell when someone's removed a painting from a wall, but the square of dustless outline still clings to the surface. My mom didn't even wait for me to take off my coat. She said, in that overly light tone she uses when she knows something's going to upset me, "Oh, you noticed right away, huh? We just wanted to open up the space a little. It felt too crowded." I didn't ask a single question. Not about the piano. Not about why no one thought to mention it. I just said I was tired from the drive, rolled my suitcase to the guest room, and shut the door behind me. And instantly I knew something else was off. The room smelled like citrus and shaving cream. The bed had different sheets, ones I didn't grow up with, and there were men's slippers tucked under the nightstand. Someone had been staying here. Recently. Maybe often. I didn't say anything at dinner either. Just sat there while my brother Ben went on and on about his new Ford Bronco like it was a newborn baby or a first love. "Full package," he said. "Leather seats, 4-wheel drive, custom tires. Thing's a beast." He pulled up a photo on his phone, and that's when I saw it. In the bottom right corner, slightly out of focus, was a white price tag with a yellow diagonal stripe, exactly like the ones they use at Pickers Haven, the secondhand store on North College Avenue. And here's the thing. I knew that tag. Knew it the way you recognize handwriting or a scar. That's where my dad bought my dorm chair for college, the one with the broken leg we fixed together in the garage with wood glue and stubbornness. I went outside after that. Said I needed to make a call. I didn't. Just so I wouldn't have to sit there while Ben said I should be happy for him, as if pride were a currency he was owed and I was late on payment. I walked around the block in my old sneakers, letting the cold sink into my skin, trying not to do the math. How much did they get for it? And how did a childhood full of music and recitals and late-night practice sessions turn into a down payment for his personal ego trip? That night, I stayed in the guest room but locked the door. Not because I was scared, nothing like that, but because I needed some part of this house to still be mine, even if it was just a deadbolt. And I know it sounds small, maybe even petty, but if you've ever had something taken from you quietly, like it never mattered, like you wouldn't even notice it was gone, you get it. You really, really do. Because here's the thing no one warns you about growing up. Sometimes the space where something used to be, that empty, echoing silence, is louder than any fight. The next morning, I told my mom I was going for a walk. I even laced up my sneakers with extra intention, tied my hair back, and grabbed an old pair of sunglasses from the bowl near the front door like I actually had somewhere to be. But really, I took the side path around the house and slipped into the garage. If you've ever grown up in a house with storage corners, you'll know what I mean. The garage isn't just for cars or tools, it's where things go to quietly die. Seasonal stuff, unfinished projects, donations that never made it into the car, and sometimes the things no one wants to deal with. I thought maybe they'd shoved the piano in there, or at least parts of it. The bench, the pedals, the dusty cover with my name embroidered by my grandmother. But there was nothing. Not even the ghost of it. Not a scrap of fabric, not an indentation on the concrete, not a speck of dust that looked like it had once covered keys. Instead, there was a box. A large cardboard box sealed with old duct tape and a Sharpie scrawl that read, M. Don't toss. Yet? That parenthesis? That tiny little yet? It made my stomach flip. Inside were my school notebooks, drawings from 5th grade, some old Polaroids, and one of those CD cases we all had in the 2000s, stuffed with scratched discs labeled in bubble letters. I flipped through until I found a burned DVD labeled Recital 8th Grade, Debussy, Original Piece. I sat right there on the cold floor and watched it on my phone, using the little portable drive I keep in my backpack. I didn't remember much about the performance itself, but I remembered what it felt like. That mix of fear and thrill when the room gets quiet and all the pressure lands on your fingers. At the end, I hit a wrong note. It's subtle. You'd miss it if you weren't listening for it. But it's there, like a breath caught in the wrong place. I still won first place. And on the back of the DVD case was a sticky note, faded and curled at the edges with my dad's handwriting. You were the best one up there. I don't know why that broke me a little. Or maybe I do. Maybe because in that moment he saw me. And now? Now I didn't know what he saw. Back in the kitchen, my mom was chopping vegetables and humming something tuneless, like a person who wants you to believe nothing's wrong. She said, "Your dad's working late again tonight. Contractor deadlines, I think." But when I passed his office later, the light was on and he was sitting there watching golf, not even pretending to shuffle papers or open Excel. He didn't look up and I didn't knock. Through the window, I could see the same photo that's always hung above his desk. Me at 12, sitting at that piano, fingers poised mid-chord, wearing a dress I hated and a forced smile. I stood there for a minute, just long enough to wonder what would happen if I did knock, if I stepped inside, if I said everything I was holding back. The disappointment, the ache, the question I couldn't quite stop asking myself. Do I even matter in this house anymore? Or am I just something they kept in a box and labeled for later? I didn't knock. Not because I didn't want to talk, but because I knew the answer I'd get would either be too soft to mean anything or too sharp to survive. And honestly, I wasn't sure which would hurt worse. The next day started like every other reluctant family morning. Stale coffee, mismatched mugs, and my mom humming something off-key while unloading the dishwasher like the clatter of ceramic could drown out whatever tension still lived in the walls. I said I needed to get out of the house for a bit, maybe check out downtown or grab groceries. But really, I just wanted space. Someplace quiet where I didn't have to pretend I was okay with all of it. The missing piano, the new energy in my old room, the fact that no one had even tried to explain. Instead of the grocery store, I ended up walking into Pickers Haven. Yeah, the same thrift store I recognized from that blurry photo. It was on a whim. I wasn't even sure what I expected to find, but part of me needed to see it with my own eyes, to know it was real. The bell over the door jingled, that nostalgic little ding that always reminded me of summers with my dad. We'd come here hunting for hidden treasures, which usually just meant rusty tools or half-missing chess sets. The place hadn't changed. It still smelled like musty carpet and old pine furniture, and I swear the same Neil Diamond record was playing as when I was a kid. I wandered for a bit, past racks of faded flannel, over to the far wall where they display larger items. Furniture, instruments, stuff people can't carry out in one trip. And there it was. My piano. Not a piano. Mine. I knew it by the chipped corner on the right leg, by the tiny scratch above middle C. The one I made during a tantrum when I was 11 and missed a note during practice. There was a price tag hanging from the lid. $800. A little yellow sticker said, "As is." Below it, in red ink, "Donated." No known history. No known history. Are you kidding me? I stood there for a full minute, just staring at it. I think I was trying to hold something together inside, but my hands had already started shaking, and I had to shove them into my coat pockets before anyone noticed. A guy in an apron came over and asked if I had any questions. I said I was just looking. He smiled politely and walked away, but not before giving me that, "Are you okay?" look that always comes right before a stranger decides to back off. I left without touching it. Later that night, at dinner, Ben wouldn't stop talking about the car again. "You should see how she handles on back roads." And all I could think about was how casually he used she, like it had a soul. He pulled up another picture, this time the inside of the car. Black leather seats, touchscreen. And in the corner of the photo, right behind the gear shift, was something small but unmistakable. A folded sales slip with the same handwriting I'd seen on the Pickers Haven tag. My breath hitched. I don't even think I chewed my food after that. I excused myself from the table. In the hallway, I opened the linen closet and pulled out a box of old photos, the one labeled Family, School, Music. Inside were concert programs, report cards, and a printout of my college scholarship offer, which mentioned my piano achievements in bold. I sat on the floor, flipping through it all, and I couldn't stop thinking, when exactly did I stop being someone worth remembering? Was it when I moved out? When I stopped calling every Sunday? Or was it just easier for them to pretend my piano didn't mean anything because it made the trade-off feel cleaner? Because that's what this was, right? A trade. My past for his future. And the worst part? I didn't even get the courtesy of being asked. I didn't sleep much the night after I saw the sales slip in Ben's photo. Not because I was shocked. At that point, I don't think I could be shocked anymore. But because my brain kept replaying the same question. Who sold it? It could have been either of them. My dad, with his detached practicality, or my mom, who always said it's just stuff when she didn't want to feel guilty. The next day, I walked back downtown and pushed open the door to Pickers Haven like I had a right to be there. Which, weirdly, I kind of did. The kid at the register, early 20s, buzz cut, name tag said Kyle, looked up and gave me that generic customer service smile. I told him I'd bought a piano from them a few weeks ago and lost the receipt, asked if there was a way to get a copy. He tapped a few keys, asked if I knew the item number. I did. I'd memorized it the night before, straight from the photo. He squinted at the screen, then nodded. Yeah, I remember that one. It moved quick. Someone bought it the same day it was donated. Storm coming in, we had a bit of a rush that week. I asked if I could see a copy of the purchase slip. He hesitated. We can only give that to the buyer or the person who donated it. Fair. I paused, then pulled out my phone and showed him an old picture. Me, age 12, sitting at that piano in our living room mid-performance. It's blurry but unmistakable. The same scratch above middle C. Kyle looked at the photo, then at me. Something in his posture softened. You know who brought it in? I nodded. He didn't say anything else, just turned the screen so I could see the name on the form. It was my dad's. Signature? Illegible scribble. No comment field filled out. Just a date, a price, and a quiet little betrayal. The store smelled like old coffee and dust. That dry, throat-sticking kind of air that makes everything feel a little heavier than it should. I thanked Kyle, left the store, and walked straight home. Didn't stop for coffee. Didn't look in any windows. Didn't check my phone. When I got in, my parents were both in the kitchen. My mom was folding a kitchen towel, and my dad was pretending to read the paper. Neither of them looked up when I came in, so I just said it, out loud. You sold the piano without asking. My mom froze. Like, actually froze. Hands mid-fold, eyes not blinking. My dad looked up slowly, sighed, then said, We needed the money. You don't even play anymore. That line. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask, so what? I don't play. So it stops mattering? Is that how you measure what's worth keeping? But I didn't. I just turned, walked to the door, and let it close behind me without a sound. It didn't slam. But something else did. Something inside me. And if I'm being honest, I don't know what hurt more. That they sold it, or that they didn't think I'd care. It started with a phone call that didn't even try to sound casual. No, hey, no, how are you? No weather talk. Just my mom's voice, clipped and purposeful. We want to talk. Come over for dinner. And maybe I should have said no. Maybe I should have asked what it was about or made up some excuse about work or groceries or needing to wash my hair. But I didn't. Something in her tone made it feel less like an invitation and more like a summons. The kind you don't ignore unless you're ready to be erased for good. So I went. Wore my safest version of myself. Jeans with no holes, hoodie with no message, face with no expression. The kitchen smelled like lemon and roasted chicken, which would have been comforting if the table hadn't already been set for 3, with silverware lined up like they were expecting a verdict. They made small talk for about 5 minutes, enough to say they tried. My dad asked about work. My mom complimented my hair, even though it was tied back like always and probably full of static. Then she reached under the table and pulled out a manila folder. She placed it between us like it was a centerpiece, not a landmine. We updated the will, she said, in the same tone she used to tell me the internet was down. I didn't answer, just opened it. It wasn't even a thick file. Maybe 4 pages, printed neatly, clipped at the corner. But the silence around it? That was loud. First page, second paragraph. The apartment in Fort Collins, to Benjamin. Savings and checking accounts. To be divided equally between children. Tools, personal belongings, at parents' discretion. I skimmed the rest, read it again, then again. My name was nowhere. Not in the allocations, not in the footnotes, not even in the vague legal jargon that usually says things like, including but not limited to other heirs. I looked up and said, not loudly, not dramatically, just, so I'm, what? A blank space? My mom winced, like I'd thrown something sharp. My dad looked at the salt shaker. She cleared her throat and said, "You've always been so capable. We figured you'd be fine. Ben needs structure." Capable. It's wild, right? The thing they praise you for is the same reason they leave you out. I didn't argue. I didn't yell or cry or even raise an eyebrow. Just slid the folder back across the table, stood up and said I had somewhere to be, which I didn't, unless you count my bathtub in silence. On the walk home, which, by the way, took twice as long because I missed my turn on purpose, I logged into my insurance account and changed the beneficiaries. They'd been listed there since I first signed up at 25, when I thought responsibility meant keeping your parents safe even if they didn't ask you to. Now? Different story. I know it sounds cold, maybe even vindictive, but the truth is, it was the most rational thing I'd done in weeks. I wasn't cutting them off out of anger. I was just accepting the terms they'd already written. They didn't call after that. Neither did I. 2 weeks later, I got an alert from my old bank, the kind I only keep open for forgotten subscriptions and ghosted gym memberships. My brother had taken out a title loan against the Bronco, and guess where the funds were wired? Not to his rent, not to pay off debt, but directly into our parents' account. So I guess the gift car was more like an investment. Because when they said we wanted to give him a leg up, what they meant was, we're going to keep bailing him out using resources that were never ours to begin with. And in that moment, sitting on my floor in socks, holding my phone like it was about to apologize, I realized something I think I'd been dancing around for months. The piano wasn't the first thing they gave away without asking. It was just the last thing I still cared about. And maybe that's the part that stings most. Not the act itself, but how unsurprising it was. Like betrayal was just a line they crossed so slowly I didn't even notice I was on the other side of it until the door had already shut. I moved into my own place the first week of May, a third-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that smelled like sun-warmed brick and someone else's cooking. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with uneven floors and the kind of old radiator that clanks like it's coughing up ghosts. But it was mine. I picked it mostly for the window, wide and west-facing, and the way the light fell across the floor at around 6:45 p.m. There was a corner to the right of it, completely bare. No furniture, no outlet, no plan. I kept telling myself I'd do something with it, but I didn't. It stayed empty for weeks, like a reminder I wasn't ready to admit to. Sometimes I'd scroll through marketplace listings late at night, used pianos, scratched and scuffed, half-tuned, mostly ignored. I'd save a few, then delete them all the next morning. Buying one felt disloyal. Not to my parents, no. I'd long stopped trying to balance that equation. But to the version of me that had once played every afternoon after school, who taped finger positions to the wall and begged for 5 more minutes before dinner. To bring in something new felt like replacing her. I started teaching again. Saturday classes for kids at the community center, most of them sharing borrowed keyboards and showing up with notebooks full of stickers. Some couldn't read music yet, but they played with heart. One day, a boy with holes in his sneakers and the brightest eyes I've ever seen looked at me between scales and asked, "Did you ever play? Like, really play?" And I smiled. Not the tight kind, but the real one. That kind that makes your chest ache a little. "Yeah," I told him, "I did. And maybe I will again." And that was the first time I actually believed it. Spring passed. Then June hit like a warm wave, and with it, a text. From my brother. "You still mad?" No punctuation, no name. Just that. I stared at it for a full minute, thumb hovering over the keyboard, trying to figure out what kind of response he thought he'd earned. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. just because I didn't owe him softness anymore. A few days later, I was driving back from the farmer's market and saw a hand painted sign: estate sale today, with a crooked arrow pointing left. I followed it. Don't ask me why. In the back of the garage, past broken lamps and stacks of VHS tapes, was an upright piano. Dusty, chipped, the kind with ivory keys yellowed at the edges. It looked tired, but familiar. The woman running the sale said they wanted $200 for it, or best offer. I offered $150 and promised I'd pick it up the same day. I called in a favor from one of the volunteers at the center. We wheeled it into my apartment that afternoon, wedging it through the stairwell like an awkward apology. I didn't clean it right away. Didn't polish or tune it. I just let it sit. It didn't feel like a replacement. It felt like a return. It stood in the corner by the window, right where the light landed. Not as a substitute for what was taken, but as proof that not everything broken needs to be restored to its former self to matter again. And maybe, just maybe, this whole story was never really about the piano. Maybe it was about learning when to stop letting other people rewrite your ending. Because not everything that's stolen needs to be retrieved. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop handing yourself over in pieces.